wrestling with God. When I was in high school, there was a young man who was an upperclassman whose name was James Green. In our 5A school, he went on to become such a good wrestler that he handled everything locally, regionally, and even at the state level. It was amazing to watch him because what he did on the wrestling mat translated, and if you don't know anything about wrestlers, they are, I guess I should probably caution you. We're not talking about what you see on TV, not that kind of thing. I'm talking about wrestling where this brother was disciplined. He was someone whose wrestling prowess showed up in every level of his life. He was an upperclassman. I only had one class with him, but I saw the discipline that applied to what made him a great wrestler apply in band. I was in band. And there was a time when the band director was giving us the blues because the drum line did not have the cadence together. Everybody got in trouble. Nobody was happy. James came back the next day with rudiments so solid because he had taken the criticism he had been given and applied them. He wasn't the best drummer on the drum line, but he was the most disciplined, and it showed up the next day. Wrestling gave him discipline. Wrestling gave him strength. Wrestling gave him insights that applied to life. He ended up going on to be successful in part because he learned through wrestling that those things could apply to life. Everyone will at some point find themselves wrestling with God. I see you looking at me like you don't believe me. Babies wrestle in the belly. Ask mama. They don't always want what mama wants. Sometimes she might want one thing and they want another, so they end up wrestling. Toddlers wrestle when they learn that word no. They wrestle with authority figures in an effort to try to get their own way. Adolescents wrestle when they're angry, when they're not getting their way. Teenagers wrestle when they're older than 12 and younger than 20. Somebody's going to do that math, I guess, a little bit later. Adults might wrestle when the bills are bigger than the budget, or when the job that you're doing doesn't align with joy, or when family fights find you, but fairness can't. Adults wrestle when health hurts instead of helping. When what you want appears to be an entire wilderness away, we find ourselves wrestling. And often we might think we're wrestling with somebody, but the truth is, quite often, we're wrestling with God. So I'd like to take a look at a text in Genesis, specifically verse 32. I'll read verse 24. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Wrestling with God can change your life forever. Laban had already tricked the trickster. He had worked 7 years for Rachel. But that wedding night, he didn't get Rachel. He got her older sister, Leah, with the weak eyes. The trickster had been tricked. That's Genesis 29. This son of Isaac, this grandson of Abraham, the to-be father of the 12 patriarchal tribes of Israel. Here we are getting ready for this text, and at this point, he's afraid of his big brother, Esau. That also means he's afraid of his past. I came up with an acronym to past. Please allow what stinks to tarry. Past. Please allow what stinks to tarry. That word tarry can mean delay. It can mean linger. It can mean stay. Rather than just letting the past mess with you today and tomorrow, let the past stay in the past. Don't let the past determine where you are or where you can go. And here, Jacob was getting ready to face in Esau his past. There's another word that Tarry, spelled the same way, T-A-R-R-Y, can also mean tarry. Tar, that thing that gets poured on the ground. And if you allow enough Texas heat to come on tar, it'll start to melt all over again. And if somebody brings up the past enough, it'll start to mess with you all over again. The past needs to stay in the past. But here we are coming up on this text, and brothers and sisters, there's a difference in Jacob. There's even a difference in Esau, even though Jacob doesn't know it yet. Jacob no longer wants to trick Esau. He wants to treat him. He wants to give him some things that he's acquired over time. But he's still afraid. He sends gift after gift after gift. Verse 21 of Genesis chapter 32 says, so Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night at the camp. He sent all these gifts in preparation to allow himself to meet up with his past Esau and have all these brotherly squabbles hopefully be squashed. And he wanted to make a difference. So he sent all these gifts, but he spent the night at the camp. He had a plan. He had a way of going about it. He knew what he wanted to do, even though he's afraid, but everything changed. You can have the world's greatest plan on how you want things to go, what you want to do, how you want to spend your 401k, how you want to spend your savings. You can have the world's greatest plan, and then life can happen and change everything quicker than right now, faster than an instant. His life changed. launched. I had a plan for yesterday, not even 24 hours ago. I had an idea. I wanted to spend some quality time with my bride and the dog and thought I was going to have a good time. I had an idea for some food. I had an idea for a number of things, and some stuff came up. Instead of being able to fly kites, instead of being able to hang with the dog, plans changed. And sometimes in our lives, no matter what we plan or how well it's thought through, we can have our plans changed and find ourselves wrestling with God. What does wrestling with God look like? Genesis 32:24 says, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. First thing I want to tell you about wrestling with God is we don't have to want to. I'm not ashamed to admit I've read this text wrong my entire life. In my memory, Jacob was this big, bad, strong dude that wrestled with God and prevailed and won, and that's not how it reads. It says, so when Jacob was left alone and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob didn't ask for it. That's not how it happened. If you look at the verses before it, that night Jacob got up, took his 2 wives and 2 female servants and 11 sons and crossed the Jordan of the Jabbok. He got ready to go to bed. Evidently something didn't sit right. He sent the rest of who was with him on ahead. Verse 23, and after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions, so Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When we got our plans all set up and we have a way that we think we want to do it, we don't even have to be wanting to bother, mess with, or deal with anybody. Jacob was all alone. And sometimes when all the crowd is gone, sometimes when all your friends don't seem to be around, sometimes when the people closest to you, when you're just trying to do the right thing, you're just trying to make it, you're just trying to go ahead in life, you're just trying to do what you're trying to do, you find yourself all alone without wanting to mess with anybody. And it says Jacob was left alone and a man wrestled with him. Jacob didn't seek the man out, the man wrestled with him. We don't have to want to. We can have an idea of how we want life to go. The man wrestled with him. You cannot want to bother anybody, want to do the right thing. Do exactly what Joel said. Get up in the morning, say your prayers, spend time in God's word. He was all alone and the man wrestled with him. We don't have to want to. This word man in the text means just what it sounds like, man. Sometimes in scripture, man can mean all of humanity. It could be men and women. In this text, it means man. It's the same word that's used for men and husband. If you were to turn just a few chapters back in Genesis chapter 2, and if you were to look at verse 23, this same word is used in another text. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of," here's this same word, man. In the creation account, God is speaking of having made woman out of man. This is what it means in this text. In this text, it means man. We don't have to want to, but a man can end up wrestling with us. When we try to mind our own business and try to do our own thing, I have an embarrassing example from my childhood of when someone on bus 234 with me was trying to mind his own business and just get to the house. Some of us had messed around and gotten a little bit of science information and learned what the epidermis is. I'm not proud of the moment I'm about to describe, but Peter Donahue was minding his own business sitting on the bus, and some of us started teasing him and saying, "Your epidermis is showing." We made it sound horrible. Ew, your epidermis is showing. We wouldn't let it go. He had on a jacket. He tried to cover up. He tried to zip up. He tried to hide stuff. It's still showing. Your epidermis is still showing. We wouldn't let it go. We put poor Peter Donahue into tears, and all he was trying to do was ride the bus and go home. We often find ourselves in Peter's place in life, where we're just trying to make it. We're not trying to mess with anybody. And like Jacob, we find ourselves all alone, and a man wrestled with him. Wrestling may not be your choice, but sometimes you can't run from what comes your way. I want to encourage you. Take your time out. If that's what mama and daddy have assigned to you, just take it. I want to encourage you. If the police have pulled you over, pull over. Take your ticket. If you walk up to your car and you had parked in the wrong spot, don't crumple it up and throw it away. Accept what you've gotten and take it. If the time has come for you to stop driving and your children lovingly have let you know, I encourage you, give them the keys. Release them. We may not want to wrestle. We may not ask to wrestle. But we don't have to want to. The text says a man wrestled with him. What does wrestling with God look like? We don't have to want to. Point number 2. We will not win. I'm talking about wrestling with God. The text says he wrestled with him. There's a word from the Greek. This is referred to as a theophany. Theos meaning God. Phenein meaning to show. If you were to look, it's an example of God showing up, not simply referring to other ways that God may show up. In this particular way, it's a way that God shows up. If you look at chapter 32, verse 30. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." This person simply looked like a man. And a theophany does not necessarily mean that encountering God means we know in advance that it's God that we're encountering. And brothers and sisters, I want to caution us, we need to be careful who we interact with and how we interact with them, because you just never know when who you're interacting with is not who it may look like. For Jacob, it just looked like a man, and he didn't discover until later that it was God that he had come face to face with. And here he is in a wrestling match he didn't ask for, when he was just trying to mind his own business, when he was alone and just try to deal with his past and deal with his brother Esau. And he found himself in a wrestling match with him. Just because we will not win, because you're not getting ready to win a wrestling match with God. I don't know how big and bad you think you are, but you're not going to win a wrestling match with God. But that doesn't mean to give up. That doesn't mean to just simply let go. That doesn't mean to just quit, say, I'm done, I'm through, I don't even want to try anymore, I'm finished. The text says he wrestled with him. Despite the fact that him was stronger, despite the fact that him was God, and we will not win, that does not mean we ought to give up or not wrestle. I guess I'm just telling you embarrassing things about me. I already told you about something that I did. I'll tell you that my mom was a primary disciplinarian coming up as a child, so she did the hands-on work required to raise me to be who I am today. If you think that I have halfway decent diction, it has nothing to do with my desire to speak well. It has everything to do with my mother, the English teacher, not putting up with the foolishness that was going to be less than stellar diction. When I had a lisp, I ended up having someone who was a speech pathologist deal with me, and I'm so thankful because it affected how I'm able to interact with others, and I appreciate it. But I'm thankful I was taken out of class to do it, so I didn't have to be embarrassed like Peter Donahue like I did to him. I'm sorry, Peter. I'm not saying he's watching this or here. I'm just saying it was wrong. But there was one time that my dad spanked me. And it was not with his hand. And I was not a toddler. I was older than 12 and less than 20. Evidently, I was in that rebellious place, and I don't even remember what it was about. I remember it was nothing like how my mom used to do it. I do know that it was very elongated. He made me go get the belt. He made me go downstairs to the basement. Nothing nice, good, pretty happened. I know we're in Texas. You don't even know what basements are. New York basements are dark and they're damp and they are dingy and it's not a pretty place. And I had to go down to the basement and he took that belt, and before he struck me with it, he made me bend over and touch my toes. And I had to hold that position. And when he was done striking me, I remember two main things. One is it didn't hurt nearly as much as I thought it would physically. My dad was a big guy. But the effect that it had on me wasn't about the physical contact. It was the lesson and the fact that I had let him down that tore me up. He wasn't trying to break me. And when God wrestles with us, we cannot win even if we didn't want to be in the wrestling match. And he's not trying to break us like my dad wasn't trying to break me. So when we wrestle right with God, we don't give up and walk away. We walk with him. We get closer to him. And we recognize that that wrestling match that we never wanted in the first place was designed to bring us closer to him and bless us in ways that we couldn't understand before we got in this match we didn't ask for. We don't have to want to. We will not win. Take the serenity prayer with you when you have the opportunity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference. We don't have to want to wrestle with God. He can choose us to wrestle with. We will not win, but that doesn't mean that we should walk away. It does not mean we should give up. We ought to learn from the wrestling match, no matter what it's about, to get closer to Him. And finally, the longer we wrestle with God, the more profound the outcome. The text says, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Daybreak is morning. Those of you that sleep in, you may not know what daybreak is. Daybreak is dawn. Sometimes it needs to dawn on us why God is wrestling with us. Why the wrestling match we never asked for and that thing we did not want came upon us. And while we end up wrestling with God, it ought not be something we give up on, walk away from, because the longer we wrestle with God, the more profound the outcome. The same word is used in Genesis chapter 19. It was in verse 15. God was trying to save Lot, but Lot wanted to linger and stay where he was and do what he was doing and keep hanging around who he had no business being around and doing what they had no business doing. And it was at dawn when the angels urged Lot to take his wife and daughters away. You don't get to the dawn unless you hang in the wrestling match all the way through the darkest of night. No matter how hard it is right now, hang in there. Hold on. Even when it's evident that you will not win. Because if you're wrestling with God and you can hang in there with Him, you can be blessed in ways that you could never imagine. I met a couple of days ago that had been married for 72 years. He's 95. She's 92. I didn't ask him, but she's still driving. I didn't volunteer to get in the car. It occurred to me that he couldn't celebrate what an incredible woman that she is and has been if he had not been able to be present and stick with it the entire 72 years. if he had given up, if he had walked away, if he had left her or she had left him. And I know in 72 years some trouble came up. I know in 72 years something came up. He's got some ways about him she didn't like. She's got some ways about her he didn't like. But for 72 years, this 95 and 92-year-old hung in there. And they didn't give up on each other, and they didn't give up on God, and they have the testimony of having made it that far. Wrestling God may happen in private, but its results show up in public. Give God all you've got and trust him with the results. Jacob got a dislocated hip. And before he even met his brother Esau, if his idea was to run away, he wasn't going to be able to, because now he had to depend on God for the rest of his life. And that's a better blessing than he could have ever possibly have realized, because he refused to let go. And he said, I'm going to hold on until you bless me. He stopped defying God, and he learned what it means. Thank you, to depend on him. Jesus, the man, did not have to want to go to Golgotha. Father, if it be thy will, let this cup pass from me. If Jesus didn't want to be crucified, none of us want to go through some of what we go through. We don't have to want to. Jesus didn't want to. And though fully God, he was fully human. And in the moment, at Golgotha, he did not win. He could have had legions of angels come to his aid. He could have had the disciples fight for him. But he died. We don't win every battle, but God wins the ultimate war. He wrestled, and the whole earth could not hold him. And on the third day, he got up with all power, heaven and earth, in his hands. And we celebrate him as Savior and Lord, because he thought it not robbery to die the death of a slave on the cross. The longer we wrestle, the more profound the outcome. What I didn't tell you about James Green is that he was not my size. I don't see anybody in here that's his size. I think Evan is bigger than he was. But you know what James Green did that allowed him to be a master in wrestling at state? He never wrestled outside his weight class. And when we wrestle with God, we're wrestling outside our weight class. So we need to trust him, hang on to him, and even though we will not win, hold on until he blesses us with what we need.